Hump Day, and welcome into the PHNX Sun Devils show. I'm Anthony Totri. If you're new here, do us a favor, hit that like button, leave a 5-star review, let us know what you like about this podcast. We got DJ Danielle behind the Mac back in action. Danielle, your first show of the new year for PHNX Sun Devils.
It's been a minute.
It's been a whole year.
Yeah, whole year.
I'm going to be honest. Before we get into Arizona State, I hate that fucking joke.
It's so annoying.
It's the worst thing ever. Oh, God. No. Honestly, if you tell me that joke, I'm not going to be your friend anymore. That's the type of joke I will wait a whole year to actually see you if you decide to use that joke. But
that's more than fair.
Look, I know we are still a ways away from Arizona State kicking off spring ball here in just a couple of months, but we've had the pleasure of talking to a couple of Arizona State's newest players, right? Whether that be guys that signed early signing period that opted to be Arizona State Sun Devils in the class of 2024. We've had the luxury of talking to some guys transferring from different programs over to Arizona State. Now, what we're going to do on today's show is way, way, way out there. And when I say way out there, you could throw like 4 Ys at the end of that. Because like I said, we are still a couple months away from Arizona State and Kenny Dillingham's second spring ball of the Dilly tenure. So we're going to do some way too early depth chart predictions for the Arizona State defense in 2024. We're going to take a look at the starters. We're also going to take a look at some guys that could potentially have some backup roles and maybe earn their spot as an Arizona State starter. But before we do that, kind of just taking a look at the Arizona State defensive roster as it is, right? Initially, you look at the roster and compare it to 2023. There are some holes, right? Along the defensive line, you're losing arguably your most impactful player in BJ Green, who is transferring over to be a Washington Husky. That hurt. It stung a lot to, have a guy like BJ Green who was initially a walk-on at Arizona State and then, eventually earned his spot as a rotational guy and then proved to be a pivotal part of this Arizona State defense. So you lose him. You lose a guy at the second level of the defense in Trey Brown, transferring over from Washington State last year, was just an absolute beast for Arizona State in the run game. Obviously dealt with some injuries a little bit later in the season, but that is definitely a hole in this Arizona State defense that the Sun Devils tried to fix via the transfer portal. And I think that at this point could be one of their deepest position groups that they have on the roster. And then they lost a couple pieces in the secondary. You lose a guy outside in Ro Torrance, who was DB1 for the Sun Devils last year. We'll see what he accomplishes at the next level if he hears his name at the NFL draft. And then obviously you lose, I'm going to call him a Sun Devil legend. I'm going to call him a Sun Devil legend just because of everything that he's been through, the type of guy that he was at Arizona State, and Jordan Clark, right? As a safety, as a nickel corner, and really as a leader of this defense, moving on, transferring to Notre Dame. Told a couple of people, and I think I may have told him too, just like certain players when they leave with 1 year left of eligibility, all of these guys that left are going to go experience different aspects of college football that they didn't necessarily get at Arizona State. And today, obviously, we're going to be hammering down on the defense, right? But BJ Green, you look at what Washington is doing right now, just a win away from being national champions. They got a date with Michigan next week for it all. BJ Green's going to be a part of that Washington defense next season. He's going to see an environment that Arizona State isn't at yet, right? Jordan Clark going to South Bend, Notre Dame. An environment and a level of intensity surrounding college football in South Bend is something he'll get to witness that is, again, just not here yet. It may never be in Tempe. To be honest with you, I can't sit here and tell you that Arizona State is ever going to have, what Notre Dame has in terms of an atmosphere. But those guys deserve those opportunities, okay? And now there are guys coming to Arizona State to try and fill those voids. You've got guys that Kenny and company were able to retain that are going to have, an extra summer, an extra spring, an extra fall camp of development before you get into your first season in the Big 12, right? Talking about a guy like Keith Abney, a dude in Montana Warren who got hurt last season, who was getting reps in the 2 deep early in spring and fall camp, which was a surprise. You got guys along the defensive line that are going to have to step up into leadership roles, right? A CJ Fight, who was a definite factor last season for Arizona State as a defensive tackle. I'm really excited to see what he does in year 2, right? Does he take that step as a leader? Does he fill the void that BJ Green left? Or in that linebacker room, you return a young guy in Tate Romney. How does he fit in with some of these incoming transfers who are maybe a little bit older and have a whole hell of a lot of experience from different universities across the country? And then in the secondary as well, right? You're really looking for somebody to step up, somebody to go out there and be maybe not Jordan Clark 2.0, but to go out there and really solidify themselves as the staple of the Arizona State secondary. Is that guy on the team right now? I think so. But the question is, was that guy already on the team before we started getting to the transfer portal, before Dilly and company signed their class of 2024 on early signing period? That's the real question. Now, again, before we get into the actual predictions that I have for who's going to be starting in the 2 deep, I would say if you're ranking the secondary, the linebacker room, and then also the defensive line just in terms of depth and star power, I would argue, actually, I don't even think you can argue. I say linebackers are definitely one. It's the deepest group of them all. I would say it has the most star power of them all. I would say the secondary is probably second on there, no pun intended, just because of you are returning some key guys from last season. A lot of those younger guys in that secondary. You added a lot of pieces on early signing period. And then when you get to the transfer portal, we're talking about guys like Javen Robinson coming over from Washington State. You're talking a guy in LaTerrence Welch coming over from LSU. And there's just a lot of dudes with a lot of potential. Kamari Wilson, you get Xavier Alford back. You return Shamari. So there is a lot of depth in that secondary. I don't think it's necessarily where the linebacker room is yet. And then the big question mark for me is the defensive line. I think Arizona State wanted to add some key guys. They wanted to add some players along that front to really have an impact in Brian Ward's scheme, which is focused around pressure and chaos and even simulated pressure. Now, did they do that enough? I think is the big question. You add a guy in Justin Wodtly coming over from Cincinnati, J.P. Dieter coming over from Purdue. Is that enough? Arizona State still in play, from my understanding, for a New Mexico State defensive lineman as well. We'll see what transpires with him as everything continues to move forward. But that's a little bit of the roster breakdown. We will go ahead, get into the starters here in just a moment. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at Illegal Pete's. I mentioned on yesterday's show that it was Taco Tuesday, but just because it's not Tuesday doesn't mean you can't go check out Illegal Pete's Tempe or Tucson locations, because I don't know about you, but this weather outside is beautiful, okay? It's not too cold, and for anybody out there that says 70 degrees is cold, you're crazy, okay? Go to the Midwest, spend a winter out there, and this will be summertime to you, okay? Because that's exactly what it's like. So it is patio season. Go check out Illegal Pete's Tempe or Tucson locations, whether it be for their tacos, their burritos, their bowls, or just the vibes. They got a full stack bar over at Illegal Pete's as well. Maybe just because it's Wednesday doesn't mean you can't start drinking, right? Go grab yourself a margarita, maybe a burrito from Illegal Pete's. Catch the NBA games going on tonight. It is the perfect place to spend an evening. Stop by your nearest Illegal Pete's for the best go-to spot for burritos, buddies, and beer. God, I love Illegal Pete's, and I haven't eaten lunch today, so Illegal Pete's sounds really damn good.
I have really grown to hate the food ads, the food ad reads, because I'm just constantly hungry. And
that's fair.
Man, I love me some Illegal Pete's.
I do, and I'm just a big fan of like Mexican food. It really is.
Me too, man.
It's yeah, no, that's valid. It is honestly probably top 3 of my favorite foods. And I'm
It's
actually
top one for me.
That's
And
fair.
as PHNX's resident Mexican, I can say the illegal Pete's, the hot salsa, the red
Yeah.
one of my favorite salsas in the
It
entire
kills.
world. I absolutely love it.
Damn. You know, I am excited I've never been to San Antonio before, but I'm going here in a couple weeks. And I'm excited to try the Mexican food that they have in San Antonio. And the reason I'm going to San Antonio is for a concert. And you're asking, Toshi, where'd you get your tickets for this concert? Well, I'll tell you, it was Game Time. Game Time actually has helped me get tickets for Christmas gifts. It's helped me give myself tickets. I'm going to I've already got 3 separate concerts that I'm set to go to in 2024. And seriously, I got all of the tickets at Game Time because it is the best place for tickets, whether that be to concerts, shows, sporting events, comedy stuff. Like, it really has everything you need. And the best part is that you can get the tickets and then you could pay later. You don't have to pay right away. You can set up a payment plan. You can do whatever you want with Game Time. They really make it super, super easy for you to get the best deals on tickets. And it's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use that code PHNX for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code PHNX for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, Danielle, I think everybody's ready to maybe lock in. Take a look at the predicted Arizona State starters. Again, this is not an official depth chart, okay? This is what I think the depth chart is going to look like on the defensive side of the ball heading into spring. So we'll start on the defensive line. I've got Clayton Smith, obviously, coming back for Arizona State, a dude coming off the edge for the Sun Devils last year, really stepping up last season as a rotational guy from the edge spot. And I think he is going to be the one to have to fill the void left by BJ Green along that left defensive end spot. I like Clayton Smith as a speed rusher. I think this is a guy that can really elevate his game in terms of maybe some power moves coming off the edge as opposed to quote unquote being a finesse rusher. But I do like Clayton Smith to have an even better season than he had last year, specifically because this will be year 2 in the Brian Ward defense. Keeping it moving along that front 7, I've got Justin Wodtly, the transfer coming over from Cincinnati, starting at one of the defensive tackle spots. This is a guy that we talked to, and he's just got an energy about him. He's got a passion for football. He's experienced. He was back on that Cincinnati team that actually was in the CFP, so he knows what it's like to play in some of those big-time games. The lights aren't too bright, and I think he can really fill the void from a leadership perspective left on that defensive side of the ball by a guy like Rode Torrance and Jordan Clark, even though it is at a entirely different position. I really do think Justin Wodtly fits really, really nicely into this defense. And the guy next to him, I think, can learn a thing or two from him. And that's where I've got CJ Fight starting at the other defensive tackle spot. CJ Fight, I said it to Sean DePaz probably about the second game of the season when we're there watching, right? First or second game of the season, I can't remember. And we're watching CJ Fight, Ashley Williams, some of these kids prep for the game on the field. And I turn to Sean and I'm like, dude, Arizona State doesn't get guys like that. Like, he's a big defensive tackle, right? This is a kid that grew up playing football at a really, really high level. And in reality, these weren't defensive linemen coming to Arizona State under Herm Edwards. These weren't really defensive linemen coming to Arizona State under Todd Graham. But you're getting a guy that can really go out there. He can fill the gap. He can stop the run. He's not going to get moved around. He can shed a block when he needs to. Again, a guy that I think is going to have a really, really solid second season at Arizona State. And like I said, can really go under the wing of a guy like Justin Wodtly transferring over from Cincinnati. So just to recap, Clayton Smith, left defensive end, Justin Wodtly as the first defensive tackle, CJ Fight right next to him. And then that right defensive end spot to round out the defensive line, Prince Dorbah. Prince Dorbah, if you remember, this is a kid that led Arizona State in sacks about midway through the season, even more than BJ Green, who, like we said earlier, is transferring over to Washington. But Prince Dorbah is a dude that can be a difference maker. He can be a playmaker for Arizona State off the edge. And unlike Clayton Smith, who is more of a speed rusher, more of a finesse guy, Prince has a deep bag, right? He can come off the edge. He can hit you with the rip. He could do everything that he needs to do to make life a living hell for opposing left tackles. And we saw it last season at the Pac-12, and hopefully Arizona State fans can look forward to seeing Prince Dorba maybe torment some Big 12 left tackles as well. But I fully expect him to be back and better than ever here in 2024. And I wouldn't be surprised if Brian Ward opted to use a guy like Prince Dorba along the defensive line in several different ways, maybe not necessarily just coming off that right defensive end spot. You see that at the next level. You see it high-level college defenses, especially when you've got two guys that are top-end rushers. Maybe they put them in the interior. Maybe they put them on the same side to experiment and then have somebody coming off the edge outside of them, right? That's, I think, something that you can look forward to. But Arizona State fans heading into 2024, that's what I think at least the front four is going to look like. And in all honesty, I know it's not a perfect season. I know it's not, you can't guarantee the health of all of these guys for the entirety of the year. But if you could, I would be very, very comfortable with those four going into Dilly's first season in the Big 12. And I think Brian Ward and company are going to be pretty happy with that as well. But look, we kind of teased earlier in the show about the linebacker room being the spot for Arizona State with the most depth on the defensive side of the ball. So let's go ahead, take a look at the two guys that I have starting along those two linebacker spots. So if you're unfamiliar, we've got the Sam linebacker spot and the Will linebacker spot. For those of you that don't know what Sam means, Sam, it really just means the S is for strong, right? That is your strong side linebacker. The Will linebacker, the W obviously stands for the weak side linebacker. So I have Zyrus Fiaseu, the San Diego State defensive MVP linebacker who transferred over to Arizona State. I have him starting at the Sam linebacker spot. Again, I think he can replicate what Trey Brown did, but at a higher level for Arizona State. He is a little bit quicker than Trey Brown was last season, and I think Zyrus, again, is a guy that Arizona State fans can have some confidence in going into 2024 to really be the vocal leader of this defense. He is a little bit smaller. He's 6 foot, 220 pounds. He's got a lot of eligibility left, but again, you're looking at a guy that was the team defensive MVP. He was San Diego State's best defensive player last season, and now he is an Arizona State Sun Devil. Had 65 total tackles last year, 5.5 sacks, 4 forced fumbles. He fits the mold of a linebacker that you want in Brian Ward's defense because, yes, he can come off the edge. Yes, he is quick, but he also has the ability to turn and run in coverage if the opposing team has a tight end that can maybe, I don't know, say play at Texas Tech like a Jalen Conyers. You got a guy like Zyrus who you could feel confident in maybe lining up across from Jalen and having a little bit of a good match up. But outside of Zyrus, moving over to that Will linebacker spot, I've got Keyshawn Elliott, the New Mexico State transfer, coming over, being an immediate impact player for Arizona State in that linebacker room here in 2024. Now, this is a guy who transferred a little bit later in the process, so I don't blame you if you're unfamiliar with him. But again, this is a kid that does have several years of eligibility left. He is a lot bigger, okay? He is a lot bigger than Zyrus. He's 6'3", 225 pounds, and he's got a whole hell of a lot of playing experience. Had over 100 total tackles for New Mexico State last season. Again, a guy that had 2.5 sacks, a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, and then this is a big one, 6 pass deflections. Okay, you're talking about the breed and the DNA of a linebacker that Brian Ward wants in this scheme. He wants a guy that, yes, can stuff the run, right? But most importantly, you've got to be a versatile, dynamic type of player. You got to be able to come off the edge. You got to be able to contain the quarterback. You got to be able to turn and run in coverage. You got to go out and be a prototypical linebacker in 2024. And I really, really feel confident with Keyshawn Elliott and Zyrus being the two starting linebackers for Arizona State. And I know that looks different. I absolutely understand that because you look back to last season and the 3 linebackers for Arizona State, I would say, honestly, the 4 linebackers for Arizona State going into the year, Trey Brown, Will Schaefer, Tate Romney, Juju Mitchell. What are those 4 doing now? Well, Will Schaefer, I believe he's at Utah State, he transferred to. Trey Brown, NFL draft. You've got Juju Mitchell, who last I checked was at Colorado. Not sure if he's still on that team. And then you've got Tate Romney, not in my starting defense yet. Tate Romney is definitely a guy that if you're going through the position groups and you're talking about guys that you could see rotate in, Tate Romney definitely a guy that would be the next man up in that rotation, despite some of the other transfers that Arizona State got. I do think Tate Romney is going to get a lot of playing time. And just a precursor, you'll probably see Tate Romney when we get to that second team Arizona State defense. But keeping it moving, getting to that third level of the defense, this is exciting. This is really, really exciting. I want to start with the free safety spot, bringing back Shamari Simmons. Shamari obviously had, I would say, a little bit of an up and down season last year for Arizona State, but the fact that you are getting him back in this Arizona State defense, you're getting another year in this secondary. I think it is really, really promising that Arizona State will have at least some sort of consistency moving into 2024 with that group, especially in the back end of that defense. But outside of Shamari, moving over to that other safety spot, the strong safety spot, my goodness, it is going to be nice to see Xavier Alford finally hit the field. If you don't know, Xavier Alford didn't get his NCAA waiver cleared last season, so he had to miss the entire 2023 season. But this is a guy that was big. This was a dude that you're out there in the spring, you're out there in Camp T, fall camp, whatever, and he's just noticeably bigger than a lot of these other defensive backs. Not just taller, but this is a guy, broad shoulders, almost looks like a linebacker, okay? But he can run in coverage. Great in coverage, and I do think that Arizona State fans, they're going to be watching him in 2024 saying, I am honestly so happy that he didn't play in 2023 because he's got more eligibility. So that's who I like starting at those safety spots. Again, keeping a little bit of consistency moving forward into 2024. And then rounding out some of those defensive back spots, I've got Ed Woods, LaTerrence Welsh, and then Keith Abney II. We'll keep that up just so I can explain to you guys where these guys were at back in 2023. Ed Woods was a staple of this Arizona State defense last year. He manned that number 2 corner spot. There may be some questions going into 2024 just because Ed Woods isn't the biggest guy. But Ed Woods proved himself, and he proved himself to Kenny Dillingham last fall, last spring. I think this is a surefire guy that you will see starting for Arizona State in 2024. The other corner spot, that is really up in the air, but I like LaTerrence Welch, another guy that we've talked to, a guy transferring over from LSU. And this is something that I brought up to Eric, that I brought up to Shane. It's when you get a guy that was recruited by LSU to go play at DBU in that defensive back room, it says a lot about the type of athlete, the type of player that LaTerrence Welch is. He didn't necessarily get the run that he would have liked at LSU under Brian Kelly. I think he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, and I like him to come start opposite Ed Woods in this Arizona State defense. And then you're looking at the nickelback corner spot. Who is going to be the guy to fill the void left at that position by Jordan Clark? I've got a guy in Keith Abney who got some run last season for Arizona State. He's part of Arizona State and Kenny Dillingham's first recruiting class under Dilly, and I think he is going to make a jump in year 2. Could potentially be, again, you're talking about somebody that's going to have some star power, some real potential to go out there and make some noise for this Arizona State defense. I love what Keith Abney did last season, and I'm really excited to see his development. So just to recap this entire Arizona State defense for everybody on audio that isn't watching, starting from the left defensive end spot, we've got Clayton Smith. Defensive tackles, I've got Justin Wodtly and CJ Fight. The right defensive end spot, I've got Prince Dorba. Sam linebacker, I got Zyrus Fiaseu. In the will linebacker spot, I got Keyshawn Elliott. And then moving in the back end, going from nickel corner, I've got Keith Abney II. The 2 cornerbacks opposite, I've got Ed Woods, LaTerrence Welch. And then at the strong safety spot, I got Xavier Alford. In the free safety spot, I've got Shamari Simmons. Now, Danielle, I've got a really out there question for you. Okay, you ready?
I don't know. I'll see. Yeah. Yes. I am extremely
ready.
ready.
There we go. That's the confidence we need in 2024. It's the, what did Eric call it? The Speedo confidence, the Speedo level of confidence. What is the best name on that defense?
Oh, not even close. I was talking about this. Zyrus Fiaseu.
Yeah.
Zyrus Fiaseu is a name. Z-Y? I don't know. You just can't beat it.
No,
Your
you
name
can't.
starts with a Z and a Y.
Look how many vowels are in his last name.
Fiaseu.
Look how many vowels are in his last name.
It's all vowels. His name is all vowels.
He's got so many vowels. No, that is an all-name defense. Again, Zyrus, Prince Dorba's a great one. Laterrence is another one. Xavier, Keyshawn Elliott is a guy that, again, I'm really excited for. And you're talking about the names of these defensive players. Just wait till you see who we've got starting. Or I guess not starting, but backing up some of these guys could potentially be some really, really impactful backups for Arizona State. And again, these are just my predictions. This is not necessarily a guarantee of guys that you're going to go out there and see immediately starting. But we're going to go ahead, get to the second half of this Too Deep in just a second. But first, I want to tell you about the BetMGM Sportsbook app. Look, Damon Dog hosts our bet show, right? And how did Damon start the day? I was sitting on the back couch back here, and Damon strolled over here looking all sad like a lost puppy. And you know why he looked sad like a lost puppy? Because he had 11-leg parlay. An 11-leg parlay. And you know how many legs he hit? 10.
He hit 10.
It
was
10.
The very first thing. He didn't even say hi to me. He's like, I lost one leg.
I lost one leg of an 11-leg.
And then he sat down and sort of pouted.
Well,
didn't even, like I said, before he even said hi, this was the very first thing out of his mouth.
Yeah, no, he pouted, but he pouted while also still having that app open and constructing another 11-leg parlay, because that's what Damon does. And look, when you're using BetMGM Sportsbook and they got all the great deals that they have on that app, honestly, you guys should be too. Maybe not an 11-leg parlay, but let's keep it simple. Let's keep it real. Maybe a 2, 3, 4-leg parlay. You got better odds of winning, guys. And they've got a great deal if you still haven't signed up. Just download the BetMGM Sportsbook app on iOS or Android, or visit BetMGM.com. Sign up and deposit at least $10 in your BetMGM Sportsbook account. Place your first wager and receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if that bet loses. And if the bet does lose, your bonus bets will be available once your initial wager is settled. Just to recap, sign up for BetMGM and use that bonus code PHNX. Place your first BetMGM Sportsbook wager through BetMGM Sportsbook mobile app of at least $10. And if that bet loses, your bonus bets will be available once your initial wager is settled. Check out the show notes for full details. And now listen to Shane talk about the disclaimer.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Indiana, Kansas, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, Nevada, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 New York. Call 1-800-327-5050 Massachusetts. 21 plus to wager. Please gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP Arizona. 1-800-BETS-OFF Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help Michigan. 1-800-981-0023 Puerto Rico in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. U.S. promotional offers not available in D.C., New York, or Ontario.
You know what the best part of BetMGM Sportsbook is, Danielle? Outside of the amazing offers that they have.
What is it?
That you can literally go to Gila River Resorts Casinos and you can use the lovely little sportsbook that they have. Guys, at Gila River Resorts and Casinos, nobody does it better. I hope some of you took my advice, spent your New Year's Eve partying it up over at Gila River Resorts and Casinos, had yourselves a good time, because they do offer an authentic and immersive experience that you aren't going to find anywhere else. I've got an unprecedented level of entertainment and excitement that you literally won't see in the Valley, okay? Gila River Resorts Casinos, they do it differently. And they haven't just set a high bar, they have set the highest bar, okay? The dining ranges from upscale to approachable. They've got state-of-the-art gaming floor that has it all, with over 800 slot machines, 15 blackjack tables, and live table games. If you don't believe me, just go check it out for yourself, guys. Head to Gila River Resorts and Casinos and let them show you what next level is all about. You do you at Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Visit playathila.com for more details. My goodness. I'm almost bummed that New Year's, that whole time is over, right? Because that's the place to go. Gila River Resorts is definitely the place to celebrate like a New Year's Eve. Or if you're like, if you don't have any family in town for Christmas, just go to the casino, man. Money's always your family. Money's your friend. Right? Isn't that there's a saying out there somewhere like that?
I'm sure it's out there. And Wild Horse Pass, gorgeous.
Oh yeah.
Just gorgeous. You got a view of the mountains, everything. It's great.
Absolutely. Look, we'll go ahead, take a look at some of these backups. First, please do us a favor. Hit that like button, guys. Hit that like button. Like I said, leave a 5-star review. Let us know what you like about this podcast. Got the one, the only Sean DePaz in that leave a like. Love it. Absolutely love it. And look, Sean DePaz was a starter at one point for this Arizona State defense, okay? He was. But when we're looking at the Too Deep, with Sean leaving for what chaos, I think he's fallen to probably the backup tier, okay? So let's go ahead, see who's accompanying Sean DePaz in the backups. for Arizona State's defense. The left defensive end spot, I've got a guy in Anthony Cooper who has spent a lot of time at Arizona State. Again, you talk about a dude that can really step up, be a leader for this Arizona State defense. I think Anthony Cooper has that potential. I'm excited to see what he could do, maybe just as a guy coming in on third down, or again, even on the opposite end of that, going in on early downs as a run stuffer. I think Anthony Cooper can definitely alleviate some of the pressure that's going to be on somebody that I feel like is a starter in Clayton Smith. Now, moving over to that defensive tackle spot, I've got a guy in Tristan Munday. Tristan Munday's a big dude. I don't know if you guys realize this, but he's 6'3", 310 pounds. So he is just slightly smaller than I am. But Tristan Munday is definitely a guy that I see having a second year under Dilly and this Brian Ward defense and elevating his game. A little bit of a rough season for Tristan Munday in year one at ASU, but I do think that he has the potential to go out there as a Wisconsin transfer, as a dude who is familiar with the Valley, went to Saguaro High School, that can go out there and elevate his game in year two. Moving over to that second defensive tackle spot, I've got J.P. Dieter. J.P. Dieter, a guy that we brought up kind of at the start of the show, transferring over from Purdue. Again, you look at where this team is at along the defensive line. Yes, we talked about the guys starting, Clayton Smith, Prince Dorba, CJ Fight, Justin Wodtly, as really being a high-level group that you can have some confidence in. J.P. Dieter in the second unit, kind of like Tate Romney, a guy that I would fully expect to be in the rotation, maybe the first rotational guy along that Arizona State defense, specifically when you're talking about that front four. I like what he brings from an experience perspective. I like the fact that he's coming over from a major conference in the Big Ten. He knows what it's like to play against some of those ridiculous offensive lines. And I think he can have an impact, again, not only on the field, but specifically as a leader. That's what you're looking for some of these younger guys. And I know I said the word leader a lot, but seriously, when you've got some of those vets like an Anthony Cooper, a J.P. Dieter transferring over from Purdue, a Justin Wodtly, that really can step into that role, because that's a question mark for this team, right? There's a void with certain players having left. We'll see who can step up and be those guys. Now, rounding out the second unit of that defensive line, I got Elijah O'Neal at that right defensive end spot. Elijah O'Neal, another guy that I don't think a whole lot of people understand just how big this guy is. He's 6'4", 245 pounds. He is a senior. It's crazy to me that he has already played this long at Arizona State. And really, Elijah O'Neal hasn't, in my opinion, had necessarily the opportunity to go out there and showcase what he's all about. But as a guy of that size, he is a prototypical defensive end. Maybe, I mean, he's not really, from my perspective, going to be growing any more height-wise. But if he can really find a way to have an impactful season coming off the edge, and when I say impactful for a guy in the second unit, I'm talking 3-4 sacks this season, a forced fumble or two in there. Like, you're talking about a dude that you would absolutely have as a very serviceable backup defensive end. And obviously, he's not shooting for that, okay? Elijah O'Neal's not shooting to be the second defensive end on this unit. He's shooting to be the starter, okay? Again, these are just my predictions, not to go out there and say that he's not capable of it, but I do think Elijah O'Neal fits better as a rotational defensive end as opposed to a guy that's going to be out there for 3 straight downs. But that rounds out the front four. Moving to the second level of this defense, a guy that we've already talked about a little bit as it relates to the starters that you could potentially see being thrown in there from time to time, Tate Romney. Tate Romney, take a bow first and foremost at that Sam linebacker spot, because Tate had a phenomenal season last year that I don't think a whole lot of people, myself included, really thought that he was going to go out there and have. But when you watch Tate Romney play football, he's a sound linebacker. He's a guy that reminds me a lot of Kyle Sully. And again, you're talking about a dude that has a ton of eligibility. He was a freshman last season, 6'2", 220, another Arizona kid coming from Chandler, 52 total tackles last season, a sack and a forced fumble, a fumble recovery, and then 4 pass deflections. Again, I think Tate Romney fits better as a rotational linebacker as opposed to a guy being out there for 3 straight downs. But again, Tate Romney proved a lot of people wrong last season. Okay, when you looked at this linebacker room, Tate Romney wasn't a projected starter. He was probably the 4th projected guy by a lot of media to be a linebacker, right? You were going Trey Brown, Juju Mitchell, Will Schaefer, and then you were going Tate Romney. Tate Romney ended up being linebacker 1 at a certain point this season when Trey Brown went down with injury, and he did just fine. So I think Tate Romney, again, fits better as a rotational linebacker, but that's not to say that he doesn't find himself starting along this Arizona State defense again. And then moving to the will linebacker spot, another transfer. Kind of crazy that we're talking about 3 of Arizona State's starting 4 linebackers, I guess, when you're talking about the 2 deep being transfers. And I got Jordan Crook, another guy that we've talked to, transferring over from Arkansas. He's familiar with SEC football. Again, Jordan didn't play a whole lot at Arkansas, but having a guy with that level of experience, even if that's just in practice, right? This is a kid that he's got the genetic makeup to go out there and be a talented linebacker. We talked a lot about the Duncanville connection, right? The types of players that come out of Duncanville High School. Well, guess where he was born? Duncanville, Texas, a 6-foot linebacker, 220 pounds. Got a lot of run on special teams last season for Arkansas, but I fully expect him to elevate his game. And again, something that we've talked about a lot specifically as it relates to those 4 linebackers, right? What do Zyrus, Tate, Jordan, and Keyshawn all have in common? They're all really young guys. They all have multiple years of eligibility left to go play in this defense. So yes, for some of them, it'll be year 1, but just wait till you get to year 2, right? That really should be the excitement, the expectation is for some of these guys, it will be a little bit of a learning curve to be in a defense that goes and flows the way that Brian Ward's defense does. But A.J. Cooper should feel very, very confident with the depth that he has at linebacker, specifically with those 4 guys that we talked about in Jordan, in Tate, in Keyshawn, and Zyrus. Backing up to that 3rd level of this Arizona State defense, this is where things get, I don't want to say weird, but they get a little different. Starting at that free safety spot, you got Kamari Wilson, another transfer from Florida. This is a kid that had, I don't want to say an up and down season, but his freshman year, he had a better year than probably his sophomore season, right? And I think Kamari is a guy that we've talked about that can go out there and he's got star level potential. He's got the ability to go out there and be a difference maker. The question is, will he? And I can't answer that question, right? Brian Ward can't answer that question. Kamari's got to be the one to show up on game day during practices and show that he could be that difference maker. But I think Kamari has the potential. He's got the skill level to go out there and be a starting defensive back for Arizona State. He's got the potential to go out there and be the starting free safety, starting strong safety for Arizona State. It is fully up to him if he's going to be able to take that starting spot away from guys that have already been here for a year. But moving over from Kamari to that strong safety spot, I've got Montana Warren, a kid that I'm really excited to see in year 2. He was a guy that when you're talking about some of these defensive backs who were there under year 1 of Dilly, Montana was a guy that was definitely a rotational player for Arizona State. He got hurt in I want to say early on in fall camp, missed 6 to 8 weeks. And his season, he didn't really have one after that. But this is a kid that showed a lot of flashes in practices. And I think, again, whether he takes that jump to be a starter in year 2 or even just a consistent rotational guy in the secondary, I think he can find a home for himself in this 2 deep for Arizona State. And ASU fans should feel pretty confident in having Montana Warren back in that secondary. But looking at those other 3 corner spots for this ASU secondary, we'll keep this up for a little bit longer because there are some guys that I do want to talk about. Starting at corner, I've got Josiah Cox. Josiah Cox starting at the same spot, in my personal opinion, as Ed Woods was starting. Again, you're talking about a guy who was a part of that Dilly recruiting class in year 1. Josiah Cox, it looks like every time that I saw this kid on the practice field, he was growing, which is kind of crazy to me that you can still grow at this point, but maybe it's because I haven't grown since I was like 5 years old. But this is a guy that's 6 foot, a $195, going into his sophomore season at Arizona State, out of San Diego, California. He's got a chip on his shoulder. This is a kid that wants to play now, and I think he's earned it. I think he's going to prove it when you get to spring ball that he can go out there and be a high-level corner moving in to the Big 12. But there are a lot of guys that are going to be fighting for those 3 to 5 spots in this Arizona State secondary. So I think it is going to be an interesting spot to see that position battle, but I do have Josiah Cox in the second unit of that 2 deep. Opposite him, I've got Javen Robinson, the transfer from Washington State University, coming over. another kid that has a lot of eligibility left. Didn't necessarily get all the run in the world at Washington State, but he's familiar with this defense because Brian Ward and a lot of this defensive staff were at Washington State before they were at ASU. Javen, again, we've talked to him. I think he was probably the first transfer that we actually had the pleasure of talking to after he made the announcement that he was transferring over to Arizona State. Another kid with a lot of heart, a lot of passion for the game of football, and he really just wants to work. This is a kid that wants to go out there and he wants to make it a living. He doesn't want to just play on Saturdays. This is a kid with the expectation in and of himself to go out there and eventually play on Sundays. And I think he's going to make that jump here for Arizona State, be in that 2 deep. And then rounding it out, I've got Chris Johnson II, another guy that we've talked to. This kid's nice. This kid's got some swag to him. And I think that's what Arizona State needs, right? And when I say swag, and you think of swaggy ASU players, I think Chase Lucas. I think Chase Lucas is a defensive back that he wasn't afraid to say what was on his mind, and he backed it up at the college level. Chris Johnson, I think, can do that. And to be totally fair to Chris Johnson, he's a bigger corner, and I've got him slotted at the nickel. He could totally move outside to either one of those corner spots. Hell, Kenny said after early signing period that he believes a lot of these young guys will get run pretty early in their tenure at Arizona State. Chris Johnson, coming out of Fort Worth, Texas, again, he knows what Texas high school football is all about. 6'1", $180. He's not the size of Ro Torrance. Ro Torrance was 6'3", he's 6'1". Pardon me, I'm so nasally today, jeez. But I think Chris Johnson definitely is out of all of the defensive backs coming to Arizona State as a part of that early signing class. I think Chris Johnson's probably the most ready to go out there and start working into that 2 deep immediately. So just to recap what the 2 deep looks like, at least in that second unit, going from left defensive end all the way to right defensive end, I've got Anthony Cooper, Tristan Monday, JP Dieter, and Elijah O'Neal. Backing it up to that second level, from Sam linebacker to Will linebacker, I've got Tate Romney and Jordan Crook. And then in the final level of this Arizona State defense, I have got at free safety, Kamari Wilson, strong safety, Montana Warren. 2 cornerback spots, I've got Javen Robinson and Josiah Cox. And then at that nickel spot, I have got Chris Johnson II. And now, Danielle, I asked you for the starters, the best name. You gave it pretty handedly, Zyrus Fiaseu. What about that second level?
I think this one isn't particularly close either.
It's not close either?
Montana Warren.
Montana Warren.
Montana Warren is a quality name.
It is. I think Sean freaked out when he heard that name too. He's like, that's an amazing name. That's an amazing. Look, I'll tell you what. None of those names are the best name on the team. None of them. The best name on the team belongs to Arizona State's freshman punter, Canyon Floyd.
Oh, Canyon Floyd. Yep.
Canyon Floyd with a K. Are you kidding me?
Canyon with a K is next level.
No, yeah. It's game changing.
Fiaseu is pretty good.
It is pretty good. It is pretty good. I mean, look, none of them are Anthony Totri level, but still, we'll give it to him. Montana Warren, best name along this the second level, I guess, of this Arizona State defense. Guys, look, I know we are still a ways away from spring ball. We're obviously a long ways away from Arizona State getting back and starting the 2024 season. But that's why these are our way too early predictions for Arizona State's defense looking into 2024. And you're probably thinking, Anthony, you're high. You're high, right? It's January 3rd, and we're talking about Arizona State's depth chart, still months away from the spring. Well, I'm not high, but tonight I might be, and that's because of our friends over at OG's. Guys, they've launched 2 new products with live rosin. If you don't know what that is, it's amazing is what it is, okay? I've made the switch over from whether that be in the gummies or like the pens as well. The live rosin is truly next level. And now they've got it in gummies and oil. Like, are you kidding me? OG's just does it differently, guys. OG's Naturals, they've got vegan gummies made with live rosin. They're available in a sweet clementine flavor. Meanwhile, the Big OG's gummy is a mega version of Peg's Raspberry Orange RSO, one of the company's most popular products. Guys, I just can't. 10 slices, 10 milligrams of THC for a total of 100 milligrams of THC. OG's, when I say that they do it differently, not only do they do it differently, but they do it better than everybody else. Because it's one thing to be different, it's one thing to be unique, but It's another to go out there and do it like OGs. Not only be different and unique, but be great at what you do. And if you don't believe me, or if you want to give it a shot for yourself, guys, to learn more about OG's gummies and where you can find them, head on over to ogsbrands.com. And before we get out of here, like I've said multiple times, hit that like button on your way out. Hit the subscribe button here on YouTube if you haven't already. Turn the little dinger, the notifications on, so you know anytime we go live. And if you want to take your fandom a step further, well, I highly encourage you to head over to gophnx.com. Check out the Die Hard tab, because we have got plenty of stuff that is only for our PHNX diehards, right? We've got the Die Hard Discord. We've got plenty of PHNX Sun Devils fans, but we've also got PHNX Suns, PHNX Coyotes, Cardinals, Diamondbacks, Wildcats. We have it all. There is a place for everybody here at PHNX. And when you're a diehard, you're going to get discounts on merch. You're going to get discounts on events. You're going to get diehard content that doesn't go to anybody but you guys. So highly encourage you to check it out. Maybe you're on the fence about it. Maybe you're on the fence about becoming a diehard. I get it. Well, maybe come to one of our events and we could talk a little bit more about it there. Or you could just see from some of our PHNX Suns fans at the next takeover that we're going to have in the next watch party as well. So the next PHNX Suns watch party is at BetMGM Sportsbook at State Farm Stadium, January 19th versus the Pelicans. Guys, there's a 5:30 p.m. watch party start. It's free to attend. They've got prizes, raffles, food, beverage specials. They have it all. Just go over to gophnx.com, hit the event tab, and you can find it there. We've also got something totally new, a putting party. That's going to be on January 24th. Join us for our first ever putting party at Putting World, presented by Michelob Ultra, January 24th. Again, event and watch party starts at 6:30 p.m. Check out our Suns crew is going to be there along with the rest of us here at PHNX. So again, go check that out. We'll make sure to have the link in the description for you guys. But that is going to do it for today's show. If you enjoyed the content, do us a favor, do me a solid. Hit that like button. Like I said, give us a follow at PHNX_Sun Devils. You can follow me at Anthony_Totri. You can follow DJ Danielle at Aprica Danielle. And on the way out, guys, we will be back for an Arizona State post-game show on Thursday for basketball. So be there or be square. It's totally up to you guys. But Arizona State and Frankie Collins, they appear to be on a little bit of a heater. So go Devils. We'll see you tomorrow. And peace.
We all silly like the mayor.